my name is Antón. I guess that most of you are web developers. And there is one thing that bothers me with web development is that a lot of people think that web development is easy. And to be fair, the entry barrier is really low. You just need a laptop, a text editor, and you can start creating content. But hopefully everyone in this room knows that things are a bit more complicated. To be a good web developer, you've seen this yesterday and in the sessions this morning, you not only need to know about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You also need to know about accessibility, security, performance, web Bluetooth, WebVR, and PWAs, and many, many other things. It's very easy to feel like this, overwhelmed by all the information that is out there. And who do you trust? Am I doing these things right? And kind of doubting yourself and knowing if what you are doing is right. Hopefully for us, well, there are many tools and services out there that do an awesome job at helping us write better code. We have linters for CSS, HTML, and JavaScript, services that are going to check different aspects of security, things to reduce the size of our images or our bundles, and many, many other things. But there are still some issues with this approach. I would like to ask you a question. How many of you know at least 3 projects from this slide? 5? 10? Well, that's an awareness problem. It's like not every developer knows about these tools. So that's the first issue. The second one is that sometimes integrating these tools and services into your flow can be a bit complicated. And there are some of these that have lots of configuration possible, so you can make some mistake along the way. And the third one is that these tools and many of the other ones that I don't know, they don't test all the aspects of web development. So there are many tools, or there are many things that don't still have a validator. So a bit over a year ago, we were at the Microsoft Edge team, we were wondering what we could do for developers to create better websites and have the best version possible. And we came up with this project, Sonarwhal. The goal with Sonarwhal is to create a tool flexible enough to allow you to integrate with those tools and services that you are already using, because they are great tools and they are the best, while at the same time allowing you to create new rules and new checks for things that are important to you or for things that don't yet have a tool or a service. In this, we open sourced it about 9 months ago, and yesterday we announced our V1. And in this time, we've released a bit over 35 rules in 6 different categories. We cover things like accessibility, PWAs, performance, security, interop, and also development while you are working directly on your laptop and not when the website is already published. There are 2 ways in which you can use Sonarwhal. The first one is via the website. Just go to sonarwhal.com, put a publicly accessible URL, wait a few moments, and you will get some results like these ones. In here, we are going to tell you what you are doing good, what you are doing bad, and also what you can do to improve, go to the documentation, tell you why this thing is important for your website and why you should care about it, and if you need to tweak something in your server configurations and such. The other option is via the command line. We distribute Sonarwhal via npm. I just have to do npm install Sonarwhal, and then from the command line, Sonarwhal and the URL of a website. This is wait a few moments, and you will get a result similar to what we see before in the website. The interesting thing about the command line is that it gives you completely flexibility. Well, here we have the results. This is for the IRS government, so if you were wondering if your tax money was using the website, you can see that no. So hopefully next year it will be better. So as I was saying, the command line is what's going to give you the most flexibility if you need to analyze your website. Configuring it is as easy as having a JSON file. The first thing that you are going to decide is the connector. We support different browsers, and not only browsers, but other things like JSDOM, which is kind of a JavaScript implementation of a browser on top of Node, or even analyzing local files. Sonarwhal is cross-browser and cross-platform, the same way as your users. It's like not all the users are using the same browser. The second thing that you are going that you can choose is the output, how the results are going to look like. In the previous slide I was showing you, it was a summary. It was just telling you the name of the rule and why it was failing. In this case, I'm going to change it and actually output the results in the stylish format. I'm actually going to create an Excel file. So that will look something similar like this. And the file will be like this one. And that's pretty handy if you need to share it with your peers or with your manager to show him or her that how awesomely you are doing or not. And the next thing is the rules. If you've used ESLint in the past, this looks very familiar. You just choose the rules that are relevant for you, and if you want them to be an error or a warning. And this gets me to the first point that I want you to remember, is that Sonarwhal should be easy to configure. We can tell you what we believe is important and why you should care about it, but not all the developments, not all the projects are the same. It's not the same to be building an online shopping experience that needs to support lots of concurrency and lots of users coming to your website than an intranet website, and that's totally fine. But you should know what is important, and it's up to you to decide what is really relevant for you. Now, I would like to show you a few of the rules that we've implemented and the possibilities that Sonarwhal has. Has anyone heard about SRI before? Okay. Well, as you know, the web is moving towards HTTPS. And that's great. That kind of guarantees that we are talking with the server that we are supposed to be talking. But that doesn't guarantee that the file that we want to download hasn't been tampered and modified by a malicious person or organization in the end. So SRI verifies that files are delivered without unexpected manipulation. And this is actually a pretty cool feature that I really like, and I guess that the United Kingdom government would have known a few months ago. Just in February, 4,000 UK government sites were running a crypto miner on their website because a third party was compromised. That is insane. So if you haven't heard about SRI, you should start looking into it. And actually, using it is not very complicated. Basically, you have a script, or it actually could be a CSS file too, and the only thing that you need to do, is add the hash of the content of the file. The browser will download the file, and if the hash matches what it's expecting, then it will be run, and if not, it won't run. And it will actually print an error on the console log. So Sonarwhal is going to analyze all your scripts and styles, and it's going to check that what you've actually, it's going to check first if you have the integrity. If you don't have it, it's going to tell you to add it. And if you have it, it's going to tell you if it's the minimum required. The SRI supports SHA 286, but the recommended one is 384. And then if the hash matches, and if you have the cross-origin anonymous if you are pulling from a third-party source. Another set of interesting rules is the PWA ones that we have. As you've seen yesterday, more or less having a PWA boils down to have your website running on HTTPS, having a web manifest, and then having a service worker. And if you are lucky and you have everything set up as you should, then you can go from here to having these buttons, or maybe having this on Chrome. So I'm going to talk a bit about the manifest ones. Manifest is just a JSON-based manifest file that provides developers with a centralized place to put metadata associated with a web application. We've seen an example before. This one is even shorter. We just need to define names, some icons, background color, display, and things like that. But there are many, many things that can go wrong with this file, even though it looks really easy. Especially if you start looking into supporting multiple browsers. So let's look at a few things that this manifest can do to improve. The first one is that if you want to use just a single image, and you want it to work across all the browsers, it needs to be at least 512 by 512 pixels. Otherwise, Chrome will not show the splash screen. So we updated. The second one is that Chromium-based browsers need the image to be a PNG file instead of a JPEG file if you want it to be on the, if you wanted to have an icon and not a screenshot of the website. So again, we need to change it. But there is even more. As you know, iOS has recently updated the operating system and has added support for web manifest and for service workers. But there is one issue with transparent icons on iOS, is that they don't always look OK on iOS. So you need to be careful with transparencies on PNG files. But there is even something more interesting with iOS and images, is that Safari 11.3 completely ignores the icons files. It's as if the property didn't exist. So you will actually have to copy the content of your manifest and use Apple Touch icon meta tags. And there is something even more interesting with the icons, is that, as you know, Microsoft is adding PWAs to the store, but if the images are over 204 kilobytes, there will be a problem, and we will not be able to submit the application to the store. So with this, one thing I want you to understand is that the team actually does a lot of research and documentation on each rule. Every time that we start working on one of those, we try to test on as many browsers and on many platforms as possible. The web belongs to everyone, and your users use many browsers and devices, and they deserve to have the best possible experience for them. We go through all the headache of testing and making sure that the things that we tell you are the ones that are going to be the most generic and going to give your users the best possible experience. The HTTP compression rule. How many of you compress the assets on your website? 1, 2, 3, quite a few. Well, as you know, you are probably using gzip, which is a fairly good compression algorithm. It's going to give you 70% of savings. But there's something more that you can do for your users. There is this algorithm built, is compatible with gzip, developed by Google, which is called Softfly, that is going to give you between 5 and 10% more savings than regular gzip, which is great for static assets, like JavaScript and CSS that shouldn't be modified fairly often. But there is something more that you can do for your users, and that's use Broadly, which can give you up to 26% more savings than Softfly. Broadly has been supported by all major browsers for more than a year, I believe. So Sonarwhal is going to download every single asset. It's going to analyze the bytes. It's going to check if you are using gzip, if you are actually using Softfly, or if you are using Broadly or not. But there are more things with compression. Compression is not as easy as just piping all the assets to a build process and generating them. There are not all the files that need to be compressed. If we detect that you are compressing a JPEG file, then you are doing something wrong, and we are going to tell you. JPEG files are not an asset that you should be compressing with gzip or Broadly. But there is something more, is accept encoding. You will be surprised by the amount of servers or CDNs that are going to ignore the offset encoding header, which is basically the way your browser tells the server what compression algorithms do you understand. There are many that are going to ignore it and directly ship you the gzip version, even though that you've requested the asset uncompressed. Or servers that you user agent is sniffing. It's like, it's not because I'm telling you that I'm this browser that you should trust me. It's like, I hope that you don't that. Or maybe you are over-compressing. There are some files that, because of the size or because maybe of other things, that shouldn't be compressed because the final asset is going to be bigger. And you might think that compression is something, or getting compression right is something that that is easy, or that, I mean, I can promise you that compression impacts absolutely everything. We've run the top 15 Alexa websites, and absolutely every single website had a compression problem. Sometimes it was bigger, sometimes it was worse. They were missing broadly, or they were missing the favicon, or things like that. So compression is something that is really difficult to get right. And with Sonarwhal, we can actually tell you what you are missing. This is the next point. It's like Sonarwhal is going to test, or we are going to try to test absolutely every single edge case. Because even if it's a case that only happens in 1% of the websites, 1% of billions of websites, that's a lot of websites. Who recognizes this code, especially the XUA compatible meta tag? Has anyone seen it in the past? For those that don't know, it's a meta tag that instructs Internet Explorer to render using its latest document mode. That means that we are not going to fall back into quirks, and things are hopefully going to look the way it should. It's become a practice to add it, so obviously we have a rule that is going to check if the meta tag exists or not. But there is something interesting with this property, is that we started ignoring it with I11. If you add that meta tag with I11, it's completely ignored. So unless you really need to support I10 or lower, you shouldn't be adding this. So what's the deal then? It's like, are we forcing you to put it, or are we forcing you to remove it with Sonarwhal? Well, that depends on your project, and that's what you can tell to Sonarwhal. Is like, you can actually tell and give more information to Sonarwhal about your use case and the browsers that you care about, and the rules will adapt its feedback depending on those. So in this case, I can add the browsers list, not I equals or is lower than I10, and Sonarwhal, instead of telling you to add this meta tag, is going to actually tell you to remove it. Knowing that with Sonarwhal you are always going to get the best feedback possible, no matter the browsers that you need to support, I think it's something really powerful. Because right now we see a lot of documents and a lot of blog posts, but they are always focused on the latest browsers. But I mean, we always know someone that needs to develop an intranet website that needs to support all browsers. And knowing that you're always going to get the right feedback no matter what is something that, even though it doesn't look like it, really excites me. So Sonarwhal is actually going to tell you to remove this feature. And this is the next point, feedback adapted to your needs. How many of you have used any of these tools? Okay, it's pretty common to now transpile your code and bundle it to make it smaller and get in different chunks. How many of you have feel like this guy trying to get Webpack configuration right? Okay, well, it's not only Webpack that is difficult to configure. The problems sometimes arise when you are using things like TypeScript and Webpack, or Babel and Webpack. Sometimes those projects have lots of configurations and many different things that you can change. And sometimes you might be enabling a feature that is going to make the other project not generate the right code or cause some incompatibilities. And that's a headache. I've suffered those problems too. Just to give you an example, do you know that TypeScript by default is going to generate ECMAScript 3 code? That means that you are supporting like very, very old browsers. Probably you don't need that. Or that if you are not using module equals CSNext, you are not going to get 3 seconds with Webpack, and thus the bundle is going to be bigger. And the same with Babel. If modules equals false, no 3 seconds. So for the last couple months, we've been working on Sonarwhal in a couple new features in parsers and rules that are going to kind of alleviate this problem and make sure that you're not shooting yourselves in the foot when you are using this project. So here we have a Sonarwhal configuration file, regular one, the rules that I want to execute, TypeScript config, no comments, target, yes, next TypeScript. And then here is a regular TypeScript configuration file. We just run Sonarwhal, where we want to launch it locally. and then it's going to tell us exactly what properties we need to modify to make sure that our bundle is going to be the smallest possible one. And this is the final thing that I want you to remember, is that Sonarwhal wants to be useful during all the development lifecycle, not only when the website is already published, but also early on. There are many bugs that the sooner they are caught, the easier it's going to get to fix them. There are things like accessibility, that if you leave at the end, you are going to have a bad time. Things like this that might even not appear when you are analyzing the website because you don't know, and many other things. So this is part of the first steps that we are doing to make sure that Sonarwhal is useful during all the development cycle that you have. The whole project is open source on GitHub. It belongs to the JS Foundation, so anyone that is interested on contributing to it, browser, individual, can chime in. Everyone will have the same weight on the project, because this is a community project for the community with its best interest. That's pretty much everything from me. So let me know if you have any questions.